I saw a loose brick on the walkway, and a plan flashed in my mind. I yanked hard, sending Tom stuttering forward enough for me to wrap my finger around the brick. I brought it up and sent it towards his face. As expected, the face parted again, and the brick flew through easily. But as soon as the face curtains pulled aside, I yanked my arm free. With my limb free, I took off in a mad sprint for my truck. I got inside and fumbled my keys as I tried to start the engine. Tom, the woman, and the boy stood together at the front door and watched as I got the van going and rocketed down the street. I drove like a madman for 10 minutes, trying to put as much space between me and the house as possible. I finally stopped at a gas station to collect my thoughts. I was jittery and my mind was swimming, but I was also relieved. I had gotten out. I collected myself and called Denise to tell her I couldn't finish the installation at 981 Maple Street. I was going to suggest we cancel the order and not send another installer there. That's when the conversation took a turn I wasn't expecting. "Where have you been? You were supposed to be off an hour ago," Denise said when I called her. "I was trying to finish the install at 981 Maple, the one you sent me to." "I didn't send you anywhere," she said. "With how insane Rory is being about overtime hours, I'm trying to keep everyone below the threshold." "What are you talking about?" "You called and asked me." "You don't remember," I said, a bad feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. She gave me a nervous chuckle. "I swear I didn't." "Are you feeling okay? You gotta come back. People are waiting for the van." "I can prove it. I have a record of you calling me on my phone," I said. I opened my call log and my jaw dropped. There was no call from Denise. She was telling me the truth. But if she didn't call me, who did? "Rory wants to talk to you when you get in." "I wouldn't mess around. He seems pissed," she said before hanging up. I haven't moved since. I wanted to write this down because I felt like it needed to be recorded. Something supremely up is happening at 981 Maple Street. It nearly got me. It still might. To think, on any other typical day, a surprise conversation with my boss would be the scariest thing that could happen to me. Funny how seeing a faceless ghoul can prioritize your problems. If you're hired to do work there, turn it down. Trust me, it's not worth it. My hands are trembling to the point where I've had to restart this several times. I'm a guy who doesn't scare easily, but this encounter has me shaking like a hit dog. I'm still sitting in my work truck, trying to work up the courage to step outside again. Worse, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my boss what happened. I was already on thin ice with him, and this might cause me to break through to the freezing water below. Because this was weird. I install cable for a living. I didn't have dreams of stringing cable when I was a little kid, but my previous life choices left me with few options. In high school, I fell in with the wrong crowd. It started with skipping school, sneaking alcohol at weekend parties, and some petty theft, but it didn't stay that way for long. Soon, I dropped out and dedicated my life to committing robberies to pay for my pill addiction. I wasn't living as much as I was running on a treadmill. I did whatever I could to stay on my feet, but constantly felt myself slipping. My bottom came when I was jumped by two guys who sold me pills. I had bought from them before and trusted them, but the feeling was not mutual. Someone had dimed a buddy of theirs out to the police, and he was looking at real jail time. They assumed it was me and beat me senseless. I was greeted at the door with a punch to the jaw that sent me reeling. My brain, already addled and slowed by oxy, was in the middle of putting together what was happening when the next punch caught me in the temple. I collapsed to the ground and covered my neck and face as best as I could. The next few minutes were a flurry of punches, kicks, and stomps. When it was all over, I had a broken jaw, a shattered wrist, several wounds that required 50 total stitches, and a concussion. That's how I kicked my painkiller addiction. I can joke now, but the next 6 months were the hardest in my life. The withdrawals I had were the worst thing I've ever experienced. Having them while I was recuperating from my injuries was a circle of hell I didn't think existed. I wanted to die most days and felt lost in the darkness. But sobriety was the beacon on the horizon. Even during my darkest moments, I could still see the fuzzy spark of white light off in the distance. It kept me going. 6 months from my beatdown day, I came out the other side healthier but weaker. I needed a job but had limited skills. Thankfully, I had a former pill buddy who managed to keep steady employment with the cable company. We always got along, and he called in a few favors and hooked me up. I got hired, but it was a struggle. Not the work, which was easy to learn, but dealing with the public without telling them to off. Worse was trying to avoid the flood of illegal substances that are around you at all times. Customers will offer you weed or pills for all the channels, or bored coworkers will have something to make the day pass by. It's a lot to dodge, especially if you're in recovery. Whenever I felt the itch again, I'd feel the scar tissue from my wrist surgery, and the itch would pass. The last week has been one of those "is it Friday yet" weeks that seem to be growing in frequency these days. I don't want to bore you with the details, but needless to say, most nights I needed to reach out to my sponsor and have them talk me off the ledge. We recently had a turnover at the executive level, and my new boss Rory was a tremendous cock. A rager at levels science hasn't ever seen before. Just the worst dude imaginable. Part of Rory's new crusade was coming in and firing a bunch of guys. The company called it checking for redundancies in the labor force, but we all knew what it was. He was picking off two classes of people: high earners and guys with spotty pasts. I was in the latter group and imagined it was just a matter of time before my number got pulled. I was on pins and needles all week. I made sure I was the greatest cable installer you'd ever meet. So far, I was getting high marks, but the forced joviality was wearing thin. It's safe to say my joy had left on a one-way ticket. I have no clue when or if she'd return. Back to this. I had just finished up my last job of the day when my work phone started buzzing. I cursed and thought about not answering, but the threat of unemployment loomed too large for me to do that. I picked up and knew from the jump my day was far from over. Denise from dispatch asked if I could cover a job left hanging because of scheduling conflicts. See, the original installer had been let go. It was near where I was and was a simple install. I gritted my teeth and agreed. I liked Denise and knew she was worried about the hammer falling on her too. She thanked me profusely and promised to bring me cookies tomorrow. Since she's a hellcat in the kitchen and getting close to a dispatcher never hurts, I said no worries. I hung up, balled up my jacket, and screamed into it. I felt better after that. 981 Maple Street was about 5 minutes away, but it felt like a world away. Maple Street was at the end of the neighborhood where large swaths of grass fields faded into a thicket of woods. The woods rose up into the foothills until they graduated to mountains. To borrow a phrase from Shel Silverstein, the house resided where the sidewalk ends. The house, an off-white birdhouse ranch type, was a little run down but no worse than any of the others that populated this neighborhood. This place had been hit hard by economic times and property values had plummeted. It was slowly recovering. In 5 years, this would be a place most current residents wouldn't be able to afford. The front yard had a large oak tree that looked amazing but had killed the grass under its canopy. The rest of the yard looked well cared for. I knocked and heard a few voices talking on the other side of the door. It opened, and a man in his late 40s stood there with a steaming cup of coffee in one hand. He was tall and thin, save for a middle-aged paunch. His face was starting to crinkle at the edges, but he was Southern California middle-aged, which meant he was holding up pretty well. He did look tired, though the bags under his eyes were full-on steamer trunks. "You with the cable company?" he asked. Knowing I was, I nodded. "You requested an install, right?" "Yes, I did. Please come in." He opened the door wide and I walked in. The house was pretty bare with a bachelor pad aesthetic. That didn't make much sense since I heard a female voice talking to him. I assumed it was his wife. I believe in a lot of wild, but to think that a wife would be fine with their house decorated like a 23-year-old bachelor lived there was a bridge too far. "I'm Tom," the guy said, extending his hand. I shook it. "What did you need from my end?" "Do you know if there was a previous hookup here?" Yeah. There is one in this room and another in the back bedroom." "Okay. I should put the modem in a spot that'll hit the whole house. The signal can get wonky if it's in a room behind a wall or bricks or anything." "This room is probably the best spot," then he said. "Perfect. I have to get under the house, check the old connections, and replace some parts. Where's your hatch to get under the house?" "Oh, it's around back. You can exit out this side door and walk through the backyard. It's on the eastern side. You might need a screwdriver to remove the grate." Do you need one? I pulled a screwdriver from my pocket and showed him. I should be good. Thank you, though. I should have guessed you'd have one. I appreciate your concern. Is there anything in the backyard I should be worried about? Dogs? Kids? Wild dogs? Wild kids? It was standard banter, and it always got a chuckle out of people. Same thing happened here. Nothing to worry about, he said. You should be good. All right, I'll get started so you can get online as soon as possible. Great. If you need anything, I'll be doing some work in the back bedroom. I nodded and headed for the side door. The dining room door led to the pie wedge-shaped backyard, which was larger in the back than the front made it look. The grass was as cooked as its kin in the front, but islands of green weeds seemed to be thriving. In the corner of the lot, an old metal shed stood, rusted to the point where I assumed divine intervention kept it standing. It seemed to have been there since the house had been built, or maybe several decades before. When I turned the corner of the house, I spotted a woman and child staring into the corner of the yard, their backs facing me. The woman wore a faded blue dress that fit her well. Tom had, it seemed, outkicked his coverage with her. I didn't want to startle them, so I offered a friendly hello to the pair. The kids started to turn, but the mother placed a hand on their shoulder and kept their heads facing away from me. I squinted along the tree line, trying to see what they were concentrating on, but I didn't see anything unusual. Just wanting to be done with the job, I let them be and moved on. I turned another corner to the house's short side and spotted the grate leading to the crawl space. The grate looked as old as the shed, and I wasn't sure I would even need the screwdriver to open it. Hell, I was sure the thing would disintegrate in my hands as soon as I touched it. I crouched and was about to pull it off when I heard something rustling near me. I glanced back to where I had seen the mom and kid, but they were gone. I assumed I had heard them leaving. I pulled the grate off. I was right, no screwdriver necessary, and as I set it aside, something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. It was the kid, a boy around 8 or so. But they weren't staring at me exactly. They were looking away from me, staring up at the roofline. I found it odd. Clearly the kid wanted to talk to me but had turned their back on me. I coughed to let them know that I knew they were there, but they didn't respond. "Hey man, what's up there?" I said. "Nothing nice," he said, still keeping their gaze away from me. "Oh," I said, "not going to hurt me, is it?" "Maybe," he said. Not the answer I was expecting. "What is it?" "They told me you'd know soon enough." As he said that, I felt something crawling across my hand. I pulled my hand away from the house and shook it. I saw a spider land in a pile of leaves and scurry away. I let out a nervous laugh. I'm not scared of spiders or anything, but the shock of being told some unseen thing was watching me and didn't look pleased, coupled with the sensation of something on my skin, was enough to justify a quickened heartbeat. I looked back at where the kid had been standing, but he was gone. I chalked it up to kids being little weirdos and went back to work. The faster I could get this installation done, the quicker I could go home and smoke a bowl. I let Kush be my guide. I put up my hood, turned on my small flashlight, and shimmied through the opening under the house. I know guys who've worked for the company for years and still dread going into a crawl space. Granted, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I don't mind either. The bugs can be a nuisance, but if you don't bother them, they tend to not bother you. Same with rats and mice. Raccoons, though, I crawl out and call animal control. Those little dudes are cute but nasty as all get out. My path today was nothing but cobwebs, so I was okay. I flashed my light around and saw where the cable line went up into the living room floor. My job here was to ensure the coaxial line's integrity was still good. If it had been chewed on or anything, I'd replace it. Sometimes, I just replaced it anyway, saving myself a potential job later down the line. I crawled over to where the line came in from the pedestal and started my once-over. I not only looked for any damage but also ran the line through my hands to make sure my eyes didn't miss anything. I was under the dining room area when I heard that side door close. I stopped. Tom said something, but it was muffled. I wanted to be nosy, so I waited a beat to hear if anyone spoke back to him. Someone did. It was soft and quiet. I assumed it was the boy and I didn't make out what they asked, but I did hear Tom's response. In a firm voice, he said, "No, not right now." Run along. There were footsteps over me that faded into another section of the home. Tom said he always wants to jump the gun. How many times do I have to tell him? I suppressed a laugh at the last line. It's the official father's lament. I kept moving my hand down the line and didn't feel nicks along the cable. In fact, on closer inspection, the line looked almost new. I was planning to change it, but this looked like it had been installed last week. I could hear someone walk into the living room as I reached the spot where the line went through the house. Another pair of footsteps followed the first, and I heard a breathy but detached woman's voice ask, "Can we show our faces now?" I just told the boy, "No, what makes you any different," Tom said, an edge to his voice. A chill raced through my body. I knew those words, but this conversation made me feel like I spoke another language. Can we show our faces? Why would you not? Do you think he'll see us? If I have my way, he said, not finishing that thought. Leave me be. I must try to get some things done before he leaves, and you two keep bothering me. What did Tom mean to get some things done before I left? What did he have in mind? While trying to process all this, I heard something shuffle in the darkness just beyond my flashlight beam. I moved it around, trying to see the telltale glowing eyes of varmints, but nothing flashed back at me. I heard something shuffling again, this time down by my feet. I cocked my head as best as I could and shone the flashlight into that corner of the house, but again, there wasn't anything else down here but me and 1,000 spiders. I sighed and finished my inspection of the wire. As I turned to crawl back out from under the house, I heard somebody sneaking around on the floor above me. The wood groaned as the person moved slowly. I wasn't sure what they were doing, but they wanted to keep it a secret. A shadow fell over the pinprick of light from where the cable went into the house. Someone was standing over it. Can you hear them down there? Moving in the dark, it was the boy. They like the dark. What are you saying? The little shadows, he said. They live down there. Do you hear them? This kid was creepy as hell. I can't hear you, dude, I said, inching my body away from the wire. We can talk inside. They're going to get you. But that's okay, he said. It only hurts for a little bit, and then you're fine. I had no desire to respond to that nightmare of a statement. I hastened my inchworming, heading back towards the open hatch. As I did, I heard more movement in the darkness around me. I tried to ignore it, but it was a fool's gambit. It was impossible to ignore. I was getting closer to the opening when I saw a pair of tiny legs walk in front of the hatch. It was the boy. How did he get there so quickly, and without me hearing him run on the floor? I didn't have time to run through the scientific method because the boy leaned down and placed the metal grate back over the hatch. "Hey," I yelled. "I'm still under here." The boy didn't stop. Instead, he placed a trash can in front of the grate, enshrouding the entire crawl space in darkness and trapping me inside. "Hey, I need you to move that," I screamed. No response. I raised my fist as high as possible and punched the floor above me to hopefully get Tom's attention. That was a mistake, as I managed to punch straight into an old nail. I felt it puncture in between my knuckles. The pain was instant, and I let out a howl. I shook my hand and swore a blue streak. I reached up with my other hand, felt the tip of the nail I had managed to punch, and found a flat spot next to it. I banged hard on the floor and yelled again for some help. Nobody responded. Not at first. Then I heard someone chuckle under the house. I couldn't locate where it had come from, because it sounded like it was all around me. I swung my light around as best as I could, but didn't see anything. No glowing eyes, nothing. I inched forward a bit, and someone laughed again. This time, it was to my right. I turned my light in that direction and saw a sudden flood of light fill the space under the house. "What the hell?" I said, my desire to leave overtaken by a desire to know what was unfolding next to me. A pair of kid legs dropped down from the hole in the floor. I realized then that the hole must be an interior crawl space. The kid had blocked off the metal grate and opened this hatch for some reason. While he dropped his legs down, he didn't move any further. "Hey, you have to open that metal grate," I yelled. "I don't want to be trapped down here." "They told me they needed you," he said, followed by a slight chuckle. "What the are you talking about?" I said, not caring that I was talking to a child. "Open the goddamn grate." "The shadows are approaching," he said, pulling himself back into the house. He placed the lid back on the hole, and I was trapped in the dark again. I cursed to myself and started pounding on the floor again. "Hey, someone come help me." That's when I felt something run across my legs. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It didn't feel like the tiny claws of a passing rat. It was cold to the touch, but as it hit my skin, I felt a burn in my bones. It's hard to explain, but I felt both extremes simultaneously. Whatever it was skittered off into the darkness of the other side of the crawl space. The kids started laughing again, which brought me back to reality. I army crawled as fast as I could to the grate. I balled up my fist and punched in the middle of the metal. The blow knocked the old nails out of the wall, and the grate broke up. I was about to push away the garbage can when it suddenly wheeled out of the way. I saw Tom's legs standing there. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. I got out from under the house so fast that I left a me-sized dirt cloud in my place. Once out, I shook my body loose as if I had things crawling all over me. Tom watched but didn't say anything at first. We finally locked eyes, and he could see the rage, fear, and confusion on my face. He wisely waited until I spoke first. "What the hell is wrong with your kid?" He blocked me under there and taunted me from the indoor crawl space. "What are you talking about?" He told me the shadow people or something were watching, and then he blocked me under the house. Tom's face twisted up into confusion. I don't understand." "I can't make it any simpler, Tom," I screamed, letting unprofessionalism take root. "I don't have a kid." It hit me like an Ali right cross. My vision got dizzy, and I struggled to catch my breath. I stared at his face, looking for the sign of a lie or a joke, but he was as stone-faced as an Easter Island statue. After a beat, I found my sense again. "I heard you talking to him in the living room when I was under the house." 1. I was on a phone call. 2. Are you spying on me? What the hell, man? "I wasn't spying, and you weren't on the phone," I said. "I also heard you talking to your wife. She asked you if she could show her face or something." "I don't have a wife either." I shook my head. I saw them in the backyard. They were staring at the fence. Tom paused and cocked his head to the side. When he spoke, it was softly, trying to calm me down. "Are you ... Did you have a few drinks before the appointment? Or a pill or something? No judging, I know pillheads. I won't report you or anything, but I understand if you need to come back tomorrow with a clearer head." "I'm sober," I said, gritting my teeth. "But I know what I saw, what I heard." As the tree said to the lumberjack, "I'm stumped," Tom said. "You look a little flush. You want a bottle of water or something? I can show you I'm here all alone." My adrenaline had seeped out of my body, and I was starting to feel like myself again. I nodded at Tom, and he smiled. "I'll go grab you one. Do you want to come into the AC?" "No, I'm okay. I need to double-check the connection to the pedestal." "Sure. Be right back," Tom said as he walked off. But I had no intention of checking the connections. I was going to check on Tom. I didn't believe him at all. Something weird was going on, and I needed to know what. As soon as he turned the corner around the house, I broke out my flashlight and headed back to the crawl space. I dropped to the ground and shone my beam into the darkness. Something had crawled on me, and I wanted to see what it was. I moved my light into every section of the crawl space, but saw no eyes glowing back at me. "If you're under there, call back." There was nothing. I was starting to feel like a paranoid idiot. I called out once again just to be sure, but again, nothing called back. I shut off my light and sighed. I started pushing myself back to my feet when I heard a faint woman's voice call out, "Can we show our faces now?" "Not yet," someone hissed from the trees above me. I snapped my head up, expecting to see someone hanging on a branch over my head, but I just saw green leaves. "Can we show our faces now?" It was the boy. It sounded like he was on the roof. I shielded my eyes and glanced at the roof but didn't see him. "No, he's not ready yet," someone whispered in my ear. I snapped around, throwing a punch as I did, only to slam my fist into the fence. I felt one of my knuckles crack as it hit the wood, and the pain shot up my arm like lightning. Within seconds, my hand started to puff up, and blood dripped out the wounds. The boy chuckled again. It came from under the house. I looked down at the grate and saw his legs disappear into the darkness. "Hey," I called and dropped to the ground. I pulled out my flashlight and shone into the darkness again. I was confident I'd see him, but he wasn't there. Nobody was. I sat up and felt goosebumps turn my arms into braille. I glanced over to the corner of the house and was surprised to see the disappearing hemline of the faded blue dress. I rushed over to the corner and didn't see the woman. I saw Tom with a bottle of water. "You okay?" "Ooh." "Where did that woman go?" I asked, my voice panicking. "She was just here." "Sir, do you need me to call your boss for you? You're starting to scare me. What's up with this house? Is it haunted?" Tom started laughing. "I hope not. I just moved in. I'd hate to have roommates again, especially ones who leave ectoplasm all over the place." As I stared at him, I saw the woman and the boy emerge from the other corner of the house. They looked up on the roof, their faces obscured by their hands in the sun. I pointed a finger at them and screamed, "They're right there." Tom spun around and looked, but there wasn't anything there. He turned back to me, not sure what to say. Instead, he handed me the bottle of water. "I gotta be honest, I didn't see anything. Drink the water ... you might have heat stroke." I threw the bottle on the ground. "I don't have heat stroke. I have a man that's lying about these things. I got close to him." "What did you have planned for me? Why do they keep asking to show their faces?" "I don't," he said, but I didn't stay to hear him finish his thought. I walked right past him and turned the corner of the house. As I did, I saw the blue hem disappear through the door that led to the kitchen. I followed right behind her. I walked into the house, which was as silent as a corpse. The woman and boy were nowhere to be seen. "Hello," I called out. "I just saw you guys walk in here. Where are you?" The door behind me opened up. Tom walked in, his face reddening with anger. "You can't just walk into my house." "I saw them walk in." "Where are they?" "I keep telling you, it's just me and you here. Now, if you want to finish your work." I walked away from him and headed toward the bedroom where I had seen the boy standing. I wanted to check that crawl space. The room was empty, not even a moving box in there, so finding the hatch that led under the house was easy. I went into the closet and pried the hatch open. Tom entered the room behind me, more confused now than angry. "I don't want a line run through here." The boy was standing in this spot. I saw his legs. I spoke to him. He told me the shadows needed me for something. I glared down into the darkness under the house. Despite Tom's feigned declarations that there wasn't another person in the house, I knew he wasn't being honest. "Okay, I'm pretty sure you're back on pills and in the middle of a delusion," he said. "How did you know I had a pill addiction?" "The way you're acting, it wasn't a hard guess." "I'm sober, but I did have a problem with pills. I never told you. I don't tell anyone." Tom stood there, confused about how to answer. I stood up and stared him down. He looked away, but I didn't move my gaze. "Who are you? Who put you up to this? Was it Rory? He trying to get me fired?" Tom's shoulders sagged. "You got me," he said. "Rory hired me to get you in trouble. I'm sorry. He offered me free cable for a year and assured me you were a bad guy. And, well, I'm weak." "That's really Fuchs," I stopped. "You're lying. Right now, you're lying." "Why?" Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dash past the open crawlspace hatch. I turned to the hatch opening and then back to Tom. "Are you trying to stop me from looking in there?" He didn't respond. "What's under there?" He said. "The boy. He hides under there all the time. He has ... friends down there. The shadow people." Tom shrugged. "What he calls them. I call them a menace. Impossible to get my work done with them, causing a racket." "What work?" "Things you'd never understand in a million years," he said. "Things beyond your brain's capacity to imagine. Things that will help usher in a new world. Your kind's time is coming to a close. My work represents the new order." I stared at him. I wasn't sure if I should run away or punch his lights out. Instead, I just spat out, bro. What the? Can we show our faces now? The boy called out from under the house. I looked down at the hatch and then back at Tom. He nodded toward the opening. Do you want to see your future? I said. I got down, grabbed the sides of the opening, and lowered my head under the house. I kept my eyes closed for a second, assuming I'd either see something horrifying or something would hit me in the face. When nothing struck me, I opened my eyes. It was dark, and I couldn't make out anything. There's nothing under here, I said. Can we show our faces now? Said the boy from somewhere under the house. Show him, Tom said. I sat back up, grabbed my flashlight from my pocket, and flipped it on. I looked at Tom. If you try anything, so help me God. Tom just smiled. I looked back down at the hatch and sighed. I was suddenly hit with a bolt of common sense. What was I doing? My internal alarms were going off and I was ignoring them. Curiosity had gotten me this far, but my fight instincts were starting to lose to my flight. No job was worth this, I said, reversing course and standing. I turned to confront Tom, but he was gone. I hadn't heard him leave, but there wasn't a trace of him there. Tom, where the hell are you? He didn't respond, and I decided that I had hit my quota for the day. I closed the closet door and headed back into the living room to grab my gear. I'd call dispatch and tell them someone else had to come out and finish the wood floor cracked, splintered, and gave way when I put my weight on it. I fell through the floor and landed with a thud on the dirt in the crawl space. On the way down, I hit my ribs on a crossbeam and heard them crack and knock the wind out of me. As I lay on the dirt, writhing in pain, my lungs did their damnedest to find a breath. It couldn't, and my vision started to blur at the edges. For a fleeting few seconds, I envisioned my death on a dirty crawlspace floor. It wasn't comforting. I rolled onto my back and finally took in a massive gulp of life-saving air. The blurring vision subsided, and all that remained was the aching pain of a busted rib. My muscles around my ribcage spasmed and pulled tight against my lungs. After the initial big breath, I could only take shallow gulps because the pain was searing. I lay there for a few seconds, collecting my thoughts, when I felt something skitter across my legs again. I kicked out of instinct but didn't hit anything. Instead, I heard the chuckling again. My flashlight had fallen out of my hand. I found it and turned it on. This time I did see something. Pairs of eyes, dozens of them, watched me from the darkness that surrounded me. These weren't possums or rats. I never hoped to find a raccoon under the house more than I did at that moment. I knew whatever these things were, they weren't natural and they wanted to harm me. Still want to know what they planned to do to you? The boy asked from behind me. I turned around and shone the light where I heard the voice. The boy was lying on his stomach, his face looking down at the ground. All I could see at the moment was the top of his head. What's going on? I said, the light bouncing from my trembling hand. I can show you my face now, he said. He raised his head and... The boy didn't have a face. He had the space for a face, but there were no features whatsoever, nothing but pale pink skin pulled tight across the front of his head. At that moment, the image of a wooden art figure came to me. What the ever-loving. Want to see something really scary? The boy said, his lack of a mouth not stopping him from speaking. He raised himself onto the tips of his fingers and toes and started skittering toward me, laughing as he did. I clambered out of the crawl space as fast as my battered body could carry me. I got out of the hole and onto my feet, and let out an ear-splitting scream. The woman in the blue dress was standing next to the hole in the floor. Like the boy, she didn't have a face either, but I could feel her eyes on me, looking into my mind, into my soul. She stepped toward me, and I bolted for the front door. I whipped it open and was greeted by Tom standing there, blocking me. He grinned. Leaving so soon. What the hell is going on? I asked, checking behind me to see if the woman was still coming toward me. She was, and she was gaining quickly. Can we show our faces now? He asked with a laugh. I turned back to Tom and nearly had a heart attack. His face was gone. I could feel my heart beating in my ears. My legs were jelly, but I kept myself propped up. The human desire to survive can perform miracles. Tom reached out and pointed at a spot on the far side of the living room wall. I turned and saw 3 skinned human faces hanging from old nails, a man, a woman, and a boy. "Your turn to join us," Tom whispered. But the voice wasn't said out loud. It came from inside my own head. "We can always use another body around here." My brain clicked into action and sent an all-points bulletin to my limbs. The message was simple and actionable: "Get the going, you dope." I felt my hand ball into a fist and spun. It landed where Tom's nose would have been. It should have knocked him back, causing him to stumble and giving me time to run. But that didn't happen. Instead, his face pulled apart, letting my fist slide right through. It closed on my arm, trapping me. I yanked and yanked, but my arm would not dislodge from his face. I glanced back and saw the woman nearly next to me. The boy was climbing out of the hole, moving like a cockroach. I looked back at the wall and saw Tom's hanging face silently laughing. Something about those silent laughs cut me to my core. They were laughing because Tom thought he had outsmarted me. He had beat me, that my face would soon be hanging on the wall next to theirs. I wasn't going to let that happen.